We are back again. This is episode 5 of Third Floor Theatrics from Studio 26. I'm Darren.
I'm Noah.
And I think tonight's episode is going to be a little different because we're going to focus the whole episode, the full hour, on the paranormal.
Yeah, I think we're going to be doing that not all the time, but just if we have a topic that we're really passionate about, I don't think 30 minutes is quite long enough. And I kind of felt that way about the aliens segment that we did in episode 2. I felt like we could easily talked about that for the whole episode. Yeah, I felt like we kind of were restricted by the 30 minutes.
By the time.
Yeah, I felt like we could have done the full hour and it would have been great. So maybe we can revisit aliens sometime down the road too.
Oh yeah, we can come back around to that and do another episode on the UFO alien phenomena. And there you go. So
yeah, and one thing before we get started, we did get some new microphones and kind of rocking a whole new setup. So if it sounds a little bit different or maybe sounds a little bit weird, that's why we're still
bear with us, people. Bear with us.
Yeah, if there's any kinks, we're figuring it out. But so far, it looks like it's running pretty smooth, and we think it sounds a lot better. So hopefully you guys do too. So you want to kick off the episode with the paranormal?
The paranormal. Yeah, so I think this is, we did the whole UFO thing, and I think, so this is sort of in that vein, but, yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about paranormal. If either one of us have had personal experiences or people we know have had experiences, we're going to kind of touch on that and just stories that we've heard or, once again, this is just our thoughts. We're not trying to sway anyone to believe this because a lot of people don't believe in the paranormal, just like they don't believe in UFOs or Bigfoot, and we'll do a whole episode on Bigfoot too.
Yeah, I've got a good story about Bigfoot.
Well, I think that should go into cryptozoology if we do one on Bigfoot and like Loch Ness and Chupacabra, and all that stuff. But
there's another episode right there.
Right there.
And plus, I wanted to throw this out there. If you guys have any suggestions for any podcast ideas, shoot them down in the comments. And if we agree with it, then we'll definitely do it.
Yeah. If someone has a good idea and let us know, and we'll sort of look into it. And if it's something we feel like we can do a good job on, we'll definitely take that in consideration and we may do it. So,
yeah. So you want to go ahead and kick off?
Kick off the scary, the creepy paranormal. Yeah, I've always, I'm one of these guys that believes in just about anything. I don't know what that says about me, but, UFOs, Bigfoot, aliens, ghosts, the spiritual plane, God, whatever, parallel universes, all that kind of weird stuff. I sort of have a fascination with, and I always have. I don't know why, but the paranormal, as far as that goes, I don't, I've never seen, if we're going to just kind of come down to just say ghost or spirits, I've never had a personal experience, that I know of that's sort of, I've never seen a ghost or heard a ghost or, and sometimes your mind can play tricks on you. That's always, that's something people have to take in consideration because, someone's like, I saw something and well, maybe they did or didn't. But, I'm trying to think, do you have any stories, though, you want to kick off that we can, because I'm trying to boil them down in my mind here.
Yeah. Ones I've heard. When I was younger, I was the most terrified little kid.
Imagine that.
Well, my older cousins, they would scare me all the time. And at my other grandma's house, she had one of those big, what are they called? The clocks that go off every hour.
Grandfather clock.
Yeah, she had one of those, and it was loud. And every time that thing would ding or whatever, they would say, "Oh, the ogre's coming, the ogre," and I would get so scared, and I'd go run and hide in the closet, and they'd let me hide in there forever.
So, did the ogre ever show up?
No, not that I'm aware.
Okay,
he might have. I was in the closet, so
you were hiding.
Yeah. So yeah, and plus, my bedroom when I was younger was right off the living room, and my dad would. He was obsessed with Ghost Hunters.
Oh yeah,
and
great show.
He would watch it like every single night, and I had to sleep with my door open. I don't know why. And
Terrified.
I would beg him, like, please stop watching this. Like, I'm trying to go to sleep. Like, this is scaring the crap out of me. And he never did. So yeah, I don't know if I actually saw anything, but like, at least I thought I saw something. Like,
In
I
the
would
house?
see, I would hear stuff, and it was an old house. It's like over 100 years old.
Right. So who knows?
Yeah, it's either a ghost or the house is just making weird noises.
Yeah. Well, and I think
and-
that's the thing. You know, you don't know. I mean, it could have just been your imagination, and so you got to say, well, did anyone else in the house ever hear or see anything?
Yeah. And plus, I don't know, like, I would see like shadows like in corners and stuff,
Right.
but I was young. So like, maybe with me being as scared as I was, like, maybe it was my brain playing tricks on me.
Right.
But there was this one time, and I tell a lot of people this story. In my room, I had a loft that was like halfway up the room, and you'd get up there with a ladder.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, like I said, young, so I had this little plastic basket that I tied a rope onto, and I'd put all my stuff in the basket. I'd go on top of the loft and pull the basket up with a rope. So half the time it was just hanging off there, like just freely in the air with the rope attached to it. And one night I was laying in bed facing the outside where the basket was, and it started swinging. And I'm thinking like, okay, maybe it's like a slight breeze or a fan or something go, but I didn't have any fans in the room.
Right.
But the living room door was open, so I was like, well, maybe just some wind is blowing it back and forth. So it starts blowing, and I'm not really thinking too much of it, and then it stops, but it doesn't stop blowing. When it's like at the highest point of its swing, it would hover.
So like
in the air.
levitate. It was
Yeah. Like it was like defying gravity. It would go do its motion, and at the very top of each side, the basket would just stay there for a few seconds. It was the creepiest thing. It was surreal.
And you didn't get into your dad's scotch or anything that night?
No, my parents really didn't drink growing up. But yeah, it would just stay there, and I don't know what it was, or I don't know how to explain it. But it was just the weirdest thing, seeing a basket defying gravity.
Yeah.
When you already believe in ghosts and you think your house is haunted. So I literally jumped out of bed screaming bloody murder, ran into my parents' room and slept on their floor that night.
There you go.
And I would do that a lot. Like, I would either sleep in the living room, I'd sleep in my parents' room, and they would try and get me to sleep in my room, and I'd see stuff and I'd get scared and I'd just scream.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think, it's like, I remember when I used to watch, Ghost Hunters too. I used to watch that a lot. And they'd always say, well, ghost is just a person without a body. And, you go, okay, yeah. And then you go, well, that's not, I don't know if that's even more comforting to know. It's, I guess in a way it could be like, well, it's just a person still. It's just, they're just not in a physical body anymore, But I'm trying to think of some stories. I know there's a lot of little stories that people have told me that coworkers and friends and stuff. And, one of our coworkers that we work with quite often, has a story about, this is about the toilet paper rolling off the roll, multiple times. Like, she's convinced that, she's like, well, there's no ventilation, there's no like ductwork, there's no windows. Why is this toilet paper just unrolling? Like,
what do you mean? Like all the way, like someone like TP'd or bathroom? Or?
Like it's unrolled, just like it's just rolled right off the tube. Like
all of it?
Yeah, there's like a big, like this layer loaded, and it's still hanging on the tube, but it's piled up where it's just like someone would just took it and pulled it.
That's weird.
And this has happened multiple times to her, and I said, well, it'd be cool if we set up like a camera but she said it's so random, and it may not happen for months. It may not happen and she told me it happened fairly recently, and she actually sort of caught it doing it. Mm-hmm. Like there's nobody in there. She lives by herself, and there's no, an animal doesn't have hands. It's like she's got dogs, but this is like somebody has taken this and pulled it deliberately by hand.
Yeah. So
she's convinced that it's something that, it's a ghost that's pulling her toilet paper off to screw with her because she's like, there's no vents, there's no windows open, there's no ventilation, there's nothing. And you know, toilet paper does not just roll off the roll automatically.
So what happened when she caught it?
I mean, I guess she was walking by, she said, and kind of saw it and then stopped and this has happened several times over the years. So she was used to it happening. I don't know if she yelled out something or she was freaked out and cussed or what, but I don't know. So that's a story that, you know, she's convinced that it's something that's not normal. That's one story. I know a lady that I used to work with also, I think is retired now. Her first husband passed away pretty young with cancer. And she swears up and down that, you know, at some point after he had died, she was getting in her car and she swears she saw him in the rearview mirror, like behind the car. But wasn't scared. It was almost, she said it was almost like a comforting thing, like he was just watching out for her. It was like he was just still observing her. So yeah, I mean, I think, and this is sort of a long story if you want to get into this. For me personally, the place I used to work had a lot of weird, and I think I've told you this story.
Yeah, I think you have.
There was a lot of weird stuff that happened there. You know, and I don't know, it was paranormal, or we were just, maybe we were just all nuts. I don't know, but it was like stuff would happen there. Like we would talk about stuff and it would just happen. Like, you know, he's like, oh, hey, you know, it was almost like, I don't say it was like a premonition. I don't know how to explain it. It was like we would talk about actors and then you'd go home and then you'd see that actor on TV that night.
Yeah.
Or somebody was talking about the guy that played in the original Shaft movie, the actor. And, you know, we went home and he's watching Monday Night Football and they zoom into the crowd and that actor's in the crowd. It's like we just talked about that guy that day.
Yeah.
We would talk about songs and stuff that no one had heard for ever. And then they would just pop up on the stereo. There was just a creepy vibe about that place. I don't know how to explain it, if it was paranormal or what, but it was just like things would happen. You would talk. One day we were outside and on break and we were talking about grandparents and, you know, what it was like, you know, growing up with your grandparents and how much fun you had. And we go outside, we were outside and we look in the trash dumpster and there's a book right on top of a bunch of trash about grandparents. And it just was like, okay, so we were just talking about grandparents and we just like glanced over and there was this book about grandparents.
You guys should have talked about you guys winning the lottery.
Yeah.
Taking advantage.
So I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird how that stuff works.
There was just, yeah, it was like very, it was just very, I don't know. It was just, like I said, whether it's paranormal, was it our imaginations? I don't know. I just know it was like, I've never really had anything happen like that anywhere else I've worked or been, or, you know, it's like, well, you know, was it all coincidental? I don't know. But it was creepy at the time. And I remember we all thought about it. We're like, what is going on? Why are we, you know?
Well, it kind of reminds me of how our work situation is, where if we say somebody's name that's a patient, within a matter of sometimes hours, maybe a day, that patient will get admitted, or at least they'll be down in ER.
Right.
And it's like, and now it's a thing on the floor where you don't say patients' names that aren't there.
No, you don't do that. That's a big no-no.
Yeah, because then it's a bad omen, and then you get those patients on the floor.
Well, speaking of that, you know, probably the weirdest, there's two situations like that for me that you know, ring a bell. I mean, it's happened, I don't know how many times, but I had a dream about a patient one time, and I had this guy, you know, I had not seen this guy in years. And then he showed up. Like the next, I come to work and he's there, and I'm like, this is just, I mean, I had not seen this guy in years. Another story like that was there was a guy that had a business years and years ago, and he had not seen him in years, and I saw his billboard driving home one evening. I saw his billboard, and I was like, oh yeah. I thought to myself, oh, the name was on the billboard of his company, and I was like, I haven't seen him in years. The next day, he's there
At work?
Yeah, he was. So I don't know how that works. It is the weirdest thing. It doesn't happen with anything else. Like you talk about money, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Or the lottery or whatever. But yeah, it's strange, man. It's and I don't know what that is. I don't know why. I don't even know how you would categorize something like that.
Yeah, and it happens to me sometimes, especially with like shows and movies. Like I'll watch a random movie, and then I'll be like, "Oh, that was a good movie. Let's watch another movie," and I'll pick another completely random movie, and it's got like the same, not like main actor because that's too obvious, but like a side person that's not, that you wouldn't associate with being in that movie, but you see that person, you're like, well, that's weird. Like I literally just saw them in another movie or another show.
But do you think that's paranormal, or that
No, I just think that's the weird power of coincidence.
The weird power of the mind. There's another episode, The Weird Power of the Mind. But yeah. So I think there's things that happen that we can't explain, and a lot of people just automatically chalk it up to the paranormal. And I'm not sure that that's accurate.
Yeah.
But
well, I think there's a lot of stuff too that maybe could be paranormal, but there's a lot of people that are like, no, there's no way. And I think it's that way with a lot of like dead set Christians. They're like, oh, we don't believe in that stuff. Like, we don't believe in the spirits, like evil spirits or just spirits in general.
Which kind of doesn't make sense, because religion is all about the spirit world, really. I mean,
but not on Earth.
Yeah.
Like, not in the way that we think of paranormal.
Right.
So yeah, it's weird. But then you have like other religions and stuff that are all about that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think science too, science doesn't, a lot of people who are very science based, they if you can't prove it, they don't want to talk about it, because it's like, well, it's, there's no spirit world, there's no ghost, there's no paranormal, because they can't, scientifically, they're so geared that way that they don't want to, they don't even want to take the chance to say, oh, well, maybe there are ghosts, maybe there are spirits, maybe there is an alternate, there is a spirit world, or a spiritual plane, because they can't prove it scientifically, so they don't, it's not a thing to them. And I don't know. I mean, I think people are trying to prove it. I think some people are trying to say, look, this is, this is proof. And then other people go, no, that's just your imagination. There's no proof at all.
And that's been a thing for a long time.
Oh yeah.
Like,
well,
there's always been like people like ghost hunters. And even before like TV and stuff was popular, I'm sure there were people out there going to like haunted mansions and haunted places.
That's always been a thing. Back in the day, you go back to like, 100 years ago, there was a lot of people doing seances, and you had a lot of mediums, spirit mediums who were trying to prove that there's, but and here's the thing about that is a lot of people, most of those, and I would say most, but I would say a big percentage, they were faking it.
Yeah. So
they would have people come and sit around a table and do this seance, and they would have it rigged up, and they would knock stuff over and have sound effects and stuff underneath the table, knocking the table. So a lot of it was faked, and that doesn't do any good, because then everybody goes, the people who don't are sort of on the fence anyway go, see, it's all fake. See, they faked it. And so then they just write it off altogether, because it's like, oh, well, everybody was faking it. So yeah, I mean, it's, I don't know. I've always had the belief that it's highly possible, like another story. I mean, the work story was weird enough, and that was, you could chalk that up to, some people say coincidence, and then some people say, well, there is no such thing as coincidence,
And the thing too, like when something's like fresh in your mind like that, you tend to notice it more.
Right. Well, it for us at work, I mean, me and a couple of the guys that would notice stuff like that, it happened all the time. And I remember and this goes back to that story again, I remember one day we were all sitting around talking about Ozzy Osbourne, and one of my coworkers was a big Ozzy fan, loved Ozzy, favorite musician, And we're talking about Ozzy, and then from the back room, Crazy Train comes blaring out on the stereo. And it was not coordinated. It wasn't like somebody said, oh, we just start talking about music and about Ozzy. And then it just blares out of the back room. And I'm like, what is it? Because it was like we were in the mid, sort of, maybe even in mid conversation. And it just, here's Ozzy blaring on the stereo. And I'm like, well, how did that add? This is bizarre. It was almost like it was queued up. Like it was like somebody was, going, oh, they're talking about Ozzy. I'm going to play this. But they weren't. It just randomly happened. So that was the kind of stuff that happened all the time. Just talking about people and things and places, and then, or, hey man, we haven't heard that Beatles song. You remember that one Beatles song that we haven't heard? Oh, what was that? And then it would just come on the radio. They would say, coming up next, we got, Eleanor Rigby by the Beatles. And it was like, what? We were just talking about that song. How is that on the radio now? It was almost like we were projecting it somehow. It was bizarre, to say the least. One of the stories I remember now that is fairly recent. It goes back to about 2015. My grandpa had passed away. Mm-hmm. And this is, I don't know if it was like, I kind of almost want to chalk it up as a sign from him after he passed away. But the name Devin kept popping up. Mm-hmm. Like after he died, like people kept calling me Devin. And it was like,
happened not too long ago too.
Yeah. Well, that's a different story altogether. We won't go there, but, so he passed away, he had his service, and later that day I was at a local store, and I ran into the preacher. Mm-hmm. And he says, and he called me Devin at the funeral. And I didn't correct him, but I was like, what? And then, so I ran into him in the store several hours later, and he says Devin, and I corrected him. So, oh, my name's Darren. He apologized. So then not long after that, a friend of mine online I was talking to, kept referring to me as Devin. Mm-hmm. And then my brother found a name tag in the weeds that said Devin on it. Huh. So this all happened like right after Grandpa passed away. And then it was just like, right then and there in that time period. And then it sort of just, that was it. But it was like 3 incidents where people called me Devin, mm-hmm. or the name tag showed up. And I'm like, what is going on? This is weird. And then I was like, a friend of mine said, well, that's your grandpa. He's giving you a sign. Mm-hmm. Now why he called me Devin, or why that would be, I don't know. It's bizarre, but it's like almost like, well, and Grandpa had a crazy sense of humor also, so maybe it's like he was screwing with me. Yeah, which would not surprise me because he was a jokester and a trickster and mm-hmm. great guy. But that was weird. That was just one of those things that like, why does everybody keep referring to me as Devin? What's going on? And then because it never really happened before that, mm-hmm. and it never really happened after that. I mean, it was just a weird, and it all happened right around the time Grandpa passed away. So I don't know.
Yeah, that is strange.
That is it paranormal? I don't know. Is it Grandpa will give me a sign from the other side? I don't know, but it's mm-hmm. weird. I mean, it's it's definitely strange. Mm-hmm. I mean,
yeah. So I don't. Yeah, it's weird thinking about that kind of stuff because it's like you said, a lot of people chalk it up to coincidence,
right?
And when a lot of people think about like paranormal, they think about like ghosts
uh-huh.
and stuff. Like you've never walked into a dark room and left with like giant scratches on your back or anything, have you?
No, thankfully.
What do you think about like the shows that like that stuff does happen, like some of the paranormal shows?
Well, I think.
Do you think a lot of that is like fake?
I don't know.
TV,
I mean, if it's fake for TV, then it's, it's not. It's doing a disservice to people who believe in that kind of stuff. Because mm-hmm. then it's like, oh, those guys are faking it.
Yeah.
And it's just like it's like with the old seances when they would fake that stuff. It's mm-hmm. like, well, they're because then when you find out it's all fake, then it ruins the. Then some people who believed in it just like, okay, well maybe maybe I shouldn't believe in it now because maybe it is, maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. I think those shows, I don't know. Ghost Hunters always seemed legitimate to me.
Yeah.
But some of the others seem
mm-hmm.
faked.
Yeah, I feel like Ghost Hunters were like the pioneer of it.
For TV, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And they're still doing it. The one guy's still doing it. Jay, he's still doing it.
Taps.
Yeah, and that's still a thing out there on the East Coast. I know that there was an episode years ago where they went to a house and there was a bunch of stuff rigged up and they found it.
Mm-hmm.
Like they found like stuff up in the attic to make sounds, and it was like rigged up, and that was the only episode I ever saw like that. But see, I mean, I don't know how many of those shows are faked or legitimate. I don't know. I mean, there's and this is another. We're going to do an episode on reality TV. So
Mm-hmm.
that is part of reality TV. I would hope that most of them are sincere, because I think people watch those shows religiously and believe in them, and you find out, oh, they were faking all those sounds were fake,
Mm-hmm.
those voices were fake. I think a lot of people are just gonna be disheartened and be like, oh man, I'm just and it whenever you fake something, whether it's people who go out and look for Bigfoot or people who try to get photos of UFOs, or when you fake it and people find out it was faked, then it just sort of ruins it for everybody.
I think a lot of the Bigfoot shows are faked. Like a lot, especially a lot of the new ones. They look so corny and just over the top, like,
Right.
and it just makes you think like you don't really watch it thinking like they're actually looking for Bigfoot. You watch it to look at the rednecks out in the woods hunting for Sasquatch.
Well, we'll touch up more of that on the reality TV show episode, but yeah, I don't know. Like I said, the paranormal is one of those kind of things. This is like with UFOs or Bigfoot or anything. It's one of those subjects that people either, I don't know. People either really believe in it, they really don't.
Mm-hmm.
There are people, I'm sure, that are on the fence.
Yeah.
There's some people that they just know 100% it's real. There's some people that just say it's 100% it's fake. It's not real.
It's going to be one of those things that are like the UFOs. Like it's going to be controversial until it's proven.
Right.
And even after, if it's proven, there's still going to be people that are like, no, it's fake. Like it's all fake.
Right. Well, there's some other stories I can think of. But there was a lady that was very religious and seemed like a real straight shooter that I knew. And she talked about when she was dating her husband, she went to his house and she saw something, like there was something setting on a kerosene heater or something. It was in the winter, and something actually lifted up. It was like a bottle or something. I don't know what it was. And it lifted up and sort of poured on the floor. And she saw this, like, it was like some like invisible hand had picked this thing up and dumped it. And she said to her husband, like, oh, what is that? What is going on? He said, oh, and he had some name. He said, oh, that's so-and-so. It's
Greg.
That's Greg. It's a ghost that lives here. And he had experienced things. So for him, it never freaked him out.
And see, stuff like that, like I feel like your mind, that's not really the thing where the mind plays the tricks on you. I feel like that's more like shadows and like stuff you see out of the corner of your
if it's
eye.
dark or whatever.
Yeah, but like if you literally see something get picked up and poured onto the ground,
that's, how do you explain that?
Yeah,
you can't, especially if the lights are on and it's not like a dimly lit room. I had another guy I worked with that had all these weird things happen. I won't mention his name, but he was kind of a he liked to stir up stuff, and so you go, well, was that, yeah, but he would make up stuff and stories, so you kind of say, well, but he swore up and down that an older lady had passed away in this house that him and his wife had bought, and he swears up and down he actually saw like an apparition of an older lady in the house, and he saw like lights. I remember him talking about this beam of light that traveled down the ceiling and sort of went towards the top of the TV, and then the TV was all staticky and then lost the picture. Like there was a beam of light that traveled, and he used to hear the cookie jar rattle in the kitchen, and he'd hear noises, and he actually saw, like he said, he swears up and down, one night he woke up and saw like a lady standing in the house, an older lady, and then sort of like freaked out and laid back down and covered up. And he says they brought in like religious people to like clear the house. Like he talks about these religious ladies coming in and having some kind of goat's horn
What?
Or yeah, that he swears up and down, or sort of like a ram horn, and they blew this ram's horn, and they did some sort of religious ceremony thing where they were going to clean the house.
Yeah, and they charged him $3,000.
No, I don't know. I don't think he was charged anything. And he says that after that it ended, almost like they were trying to send her on to the next. Like she was stuck there. She shouldn't be there.
Like purgatory.
Yeah, kind of, or she was just stuck on here in between maybe this physical and spiritual plane or whatever. He swears up and down to that. And I know there was pictures he brought in one time. He said there were some pictures they took at like a Christmas get together, and weird stuff showed up in these pictures. And he brought them in. I saw them, and yeah, it was like, and I'm like, well, did he fake that, or And he wasn't.
What was it?
It almost looked like there was a person or a skeleton or something. It was sort of this weird image that was like there was all these people at this birthday party, Christmas party, whatever. And there was something that shouldn't be there. And I remember thinking, well, could it be double? They always talk about double exposed, film getting double exposed, where it's something like an image gets layered on top of another image. Well, I guess it could have been that. I don't think he had the knowledge. He wasn't tech savvy. So for him to like go in and fake it somehow.
Yeah.
And this was several years ago. And I don't remember how many years back it was, but he talks about that. He used to talk about that all the time, stuff that would happen in the house and noises and seeing things. And I'm like, man, I think I would have to I would have to get out of the house.
Yeah.
I don't know that I could I mean, most people that I know that have seen stuff or talked about hearing things, they're creeped out, but they don't feel threatened. They don't feel like that they're in danger. And that goes back to ghost hunters. And I remember they always talked about a ghost or whatever you want to call it, a spirit is just, it's a person that doesn't have a physical body anymore. It's like the people are still there, but it's the essence of who they were, their soul, their ghost, their spirit.
But they're not there all the time.
Physically. Well, they might be there all the time. They just don't
make it known.
They don't, you kind of picture that. So like, if you sort of say, okay, well, like, so there's this person walking around your house. I'm sure after hearing this, you won't be able to sleep tonight. But it's like, if you can imagine there's a person in your house that you can't see, and they're just there, and they're walking around, and they're just there, and you can't see them. And only occasionally do they make themselves known by bumping into something or rattling something, whether they're doing that on purpose or trying to get your attention, or whether it's just accidental. So I guess if you sort of picture that, it's like, oh, there's a ghost or a spirit in the house, and it's a person, and you go, well, do they know that they're in spirit form, or do they think they're still in physical form, just walking around the house, and they're like, why is this person ignoring me? If you look at it from that perspective,
Yeah.
if it's a ghost or the person, they're like, and they're a ghost at that point, a spirit, and they're like, oh, there's these other people in my house. Why are they ignoring me? And maybe they're trying to talk to you and they can't. I mean, you got to sort of open your mind and sort of think of all these scenarios. There's a lot of people that go, Darren's drunk again. Listen to what he's saying. He's drunk. He don't know what he's talking about. And I'm sober as can be right now. I'm drinking a Mountain Dew, actually. So far. But no, it's like you sort of open your mind to that and say, well, what could it be? What is it?
Have you ever seen the movie The Lovely Bones?
No, I've heard of it.
I'm pretty sure it's based on a true story, but what you were talking about kind of reminded me of one of the scenes when the girl, when she dies, she's running around everywhere, and it's a ghostly form, but she doesn't know it's a ghostly form. So she's running down the street, and she sees her dad looking for her.
So she's a ghost.
Yes, but she doesn't know she's a ghost.
Right.
At that point, she doesn't.
Right.
And she's like screaming as loud as she could. And for a second, you see Mark Wahlberg is the dad. You see him like kind of glance over like he heard something. And then he goes right back to what he was doing. And eventually she runs home and the house is empty. And she's like, what's going on?
So you just spoiled this movie for people who've never seen it. Great.
It's a well-known movie.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, it's a well-known movie.
So it's an older film. I mean, it's not. I mean, not older, but it's not like brand new.
No, I think it may be
5-10 years maybe.
Yeah, probably.
Well, there's another movie like that that I love. I've seen many times, and I think it's called The Others. Have you seen The Others?
Not that I know of.
I'm going to spoil it, but I'm not going to say too much about the movie. It's a great film, but I'm going to spoil it. So if you've not seen The Others, and I may be wrong, maybe it's not called The Others, but if you've not seen this film, it has the Australian actress in it that was married to Tom Cruise. She played, God, here we go. She played Mira in Aquaman.
The new Aquaman?
Yeah, there's only been one Aquaman film.
Well, I don't know.
Anyway,
I don't know if there was an old one.
No. Anyway, so the whole movie, it takes place like in the or maybe it's either the 40s or what. I know one of the world wars is going on at the time, World War I or World War II. But and like I said, if you've not seen this, shut this off immediately because it is a spoiler.
Yeah, skip ahead like three
the whole movie it's great, and the whole movie you think they're in this house, her and her kids, and they never leave the house.
Mm-hmm.
And
my kind of life.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's a really good movie, and so I'm going to spoil it, but I want you to watch it anyway.
Mm-hmm. So
they never leave the house, and these people come into the house, and well, they start hearing things going on, and so what it boils down to at the very end is the mom and the two kids are ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
They're all three ghosts. So it flips at some point when it reveals what's going on, because they keep thinking the house is haunted. They're like, who's in our house? Well, they're the spirits.
Yeah.
The people that are in their house are the people who have bought the house and moved in.
When did this movie come out? A couple years.
No, it's probably 10.
Oh, I'm
10 or 12.
I'm thinking of a different movie.
But it's a really well-made film, and even though I've spoiled it for you, it's worth watching. Even though I've spoiled the twist, it is worth watching.
Oh, so that was the big twist of the movie.
Yeah, at the end, you find out like her husband comes back from the war and then leaves again, and well, he's dead too.
Mm-hmm.
And there's these groundskeepers that take care of the house, and it's just it's a great. I don't remember who made the film. It's a extremely well made film, and I didn't see the twist coming until it was revealed what it was. But it's a great film. But that's what it is. They're the ghosts in the house. They don't know that they're dead.
Mm-hmm.
I think at some point they realize they're dead. But for the bulk of the film, they're like, what are these noises? It's just a very weird film, and there's a seance in the film at one point, and but it's what we touched on. Like, they don't know they're dead.
Yeah,
they don't know they're ghosts, and they have to shut the curtains. Like the something about the light, bothers them or something. They always have to shut the curtains, keep the house dark. Very well made film, very well acted. Just a cool film.
Yeah,
but that's what we were talking about. Basically, they don't know they're dead. They're walking around this house. Other people come in. They assume the other people are the ghost because they're like, "What? I heard something. I saw somebody," and then they won't see him. Well, it turns out it's all flipped. It's the flip. The trick is that that they're the ghost, not the people coming in.
Yeah.
So it's a cool movie, but that's
Yeah, and I like watching movies like that, like a real well-made twist. And I like watching scary movies too, like paranormal stuff. And when I was younger, like I said, I was like the most scared little kid ever. The one, like, if there was a movie that was meant to be scary, but it had a monster in it, like Bigfoot or just some made-up monster, that didn't scare me near as bad as paranormal stuff, because I would think, okay, like, I know that monster's not real, like, it's made up. But when you see paranormal stuff, you're like, well, crap, that stuff might be real.
And that was always, and me being a horror nut and a sci-fi nut, and obviously, I'm part of a company that makes horror films. We'll do an episode on that too.
Shout out to Moonlight Films.
Shout out to Moonlight Films, my guys, Ian and James, wherever you're at right now. But yeah, I was that same way. Like, I could watch movies about slashers or monsters or creatures, but when it came to ghosts, when it came to paranormal, it would freak me out. I couldn't do it, because there is it's something about it to me. It just screams that, like, that's more real. I mean, look at the movies they've done that are based on, like, true stories, like the Amityville Horror. Now,
never seen it.
Well, that was based on a real story. And now they did like 20 spinoffs that had nothing to do with it. But the original story was this: there's a guy that murdered his family in this house, and it was up in New England somewhere, Rhode Island or somewhere. But a guy murdered his family in a house. Another family moved in, and it just went haywire. You know, stuff started happening. They started hearing things, seeing things. The family that moved in wrote a whole book on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they did this movie, and they did a remake with Ryan Reynolds a few years ago. They did like a 2010 remake of this. The original movie came out in the late 70s.
What was it called again?
The Amityville Horror.
And the new one's called that too?
Yeah.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, because it's based on the book. It's based on the original movie, or the original story, which is supposedly true. There's people who have said, no, that guy faked it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that guy wrote this book. None of this ever happened, you know, or very little happened. They embellished a lot. So I don't really know.
I think no matter what, there'll always be people
Yeah.
that say that kind of stuff. It could be 100% true.
But movies like that, you know, if it involved the supernatural, the paranormal, ghosts, spirits, you know, it always, you know, Poltergeist was one. I saw Poltergeist when I was 10 or 11. I remember watching it by myself. Not sure why. Because it's about ghosts.
Mm-hmm. See, to this day, I won't watch anything scary. Like even stuff with monsters, I won't watch it by myself.
Well,
I feel like horror movies
says a lot for you, buddy.
I feel like horror movies aren't like meant to be watched with someone else.
They are.
I feel that way. Like
Yeah.
that's just how I feel. And plus, like, if even the paranormal stuff now, I can watch that as long as I'm with somebody else. I'm fine. But if I'm home alone late at night watching it,
he's scared people.
Nope, I won't do it.
Well, I think, like I said, if it's a monster film, if it's about a monster or a slasher, it's something that's very out there, very over the top, you know. But there's something about the paranormal and the supernatural and ghosts and spirits and demons and angels and all that stuff. There's something about it that just, it feels too real. So even if you are someone that doubts it, there's something about it that just feels too real. So, you know, I think that's, like I said, those movies always freaked me out because I always felt like even if it's not based on a true story, even if it's just made up, just totally fiction, there's something about that subject matter that feels inherently legitimate and real.
It makes it seem like it could happen to anyone or happen to you. But like, say if there's a movie about these people going camping and Bigfoot it's
different.
That's totally it's like, that's not going to happen to me. I'm at my apartment.
Yeah, you don't leave the
city.
You don't leave your house.
Bigfoot ain't going to be messing with me.
I mean, he could be outside. Where,
he's
probably not going to break in. But
yeah,
no,
fishing in the pond.
No, and the one thing I think I've always taken from these films that I wholeheartedly is you don't mess with this stuff. Like people who mess with Ouija boards and people who mess with seances and people who, that's when trouble starts because...
Like in movies?
Well, I think in real life. I think because if you believe this stuff, a lot of times when people get attacked, you were talking about getting scratched on the back, people will, and what the belief is when you do seances or when you mess with Ouija boards or any of that occult stuff, what happens is you open up a doorway into the spirit world. And a lot of times, you know, the theory is what comes through is not
nice.
It's not nice. It's malicious because and they always talk about and this goes back to ghost hunters. They always talked about it's not a ghost. It's an inhuman spirit, meaning probably demons.
Maybe we should do that for one episode. We can voice over us messing with a Ouija board.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Have you seen that funny video?
That will never happen.
The Yahoo Answers. That guy voices over Yahoo Answers, and he's like, a Ouija board.
Oh, he didn't know how to pronounce it.
No, he's reading people that are trying to spell it.
Oh.
I'll show it to you after the podcast. It's hilarious. And same one with, he does another one with the word pregnant. He goes pregnart because people like just don't know how to spell. It's ridiculous.
Well, I'm a horrible speller too, but no, I think but I think that's one thing I've taken from it, you know, because you got to ask yourself, well, if someone died in a house and their soul or their spirit is there, they're probably if they're probably not going to hurt you. That's why they always talk about it being a ghost, being a person without a body. It's probably they're stuck there. Maybe they don't know they're stuck there. Maybe they don't know they're dead. Whatever, whatever the theory is. But if you're messing with stuff you shouldn't be messing with, if you're messing with the occult and dark magic and
The
Ouija
board,
and you invite something into your house, it's probably the thing that's going to torment you, and it's going to cause trouble, and it's going to do stuff purposely to hurt you. So I don't mess with any of that stuff, whether it's all BS or whether there's some truth to it. I just do not mess with it. I stay away from it. I've seen and read too much about that. I've just read too much and seen too much about that. You just do not mess with that kind of stuff. You're inviting trouble. You're inviting, it's one thing that some old lady died in the house, like I said, and she's still there and she shows up and makes a sound, or that's different. But when you open up the door into something potentially evil, and you're playing with a Ouija board, or however that thing works, I don't know. But if you're inviting an evil spirit or demon in your house, you've set yourself up for some bad stuff. So I do not mess with that stuff.
One thing I was reading, I don't know if it's been a while back, but it was about how it was a guy explaining how Ouija boards work. And he was saying that a lot of it is going on in your subconscious. Like, you don't think you're moving it,
but you are. Well, see, and that would be the guy that says that that's fake. He would say you're doing it yourself. I know people have told me that they've messed with those things, and maybe it was maybe it was them moving it, and they didn't realize it. But then there's people who have talked about it and swore up and down, we did not move it. It was moving on its own.
Yeah.
So that goes back to belief, whether you believe it or not. Another thing I think with the paranormal, and we didn't touch on this, but we touched on ghosts and spirits and that, because that's sort of, I think when people think paranormal, that's what they think. That's the bulk of it, but it's shadow people.
You've got an interesting story.
I have this one. I do, and I'll keep this short. And I wish I would have talked to it was my nieces and nephews. I wish I would have I was going to talk to them before we did this, because I wanted to sort of verify. I've never talked to them directly. But back in 2001, this happened. My brother told me about it like a year later. So it's been over 20 years. They were visiting their dad, and he lives out in the country, and they were out, and it was him and 3 kids, and they were back at the pond, and 2 of the kids were going to run back towards the woods. And he was with I don't know which 2 kids saw this or witnessed this. The one kid stayed with their dad, stayed with my brother. So they go back there, and this is broad daylight. This is in the middle of the day. We talk about shadows playing tricks on. This is in the middle of the day. This is not like this is not like in a room where someone has a flashlight or a car drives by and a light shine. This is in an open field out in the country, broad daylight. I don't know if it's a sunny day or not. It doesn't really matter. It was out in the open, and they were walking along the wood line, and they kept seeing something like moving through the woods, like breaking the light, coming through the trees. And so they stopped, and they froze, and something, what people would call shadow people or shadow person, sort of came. The best way to describe it is like a black silhouette of a human came out of the trees and sort of crossed in front of them, and they froze. And I remember the story was one of the kids told the other one, don't look at it. And they were so terrified, but they couldn't help but look at it. And it almost like it looked back at them, and like it almost had a consciousness, because it's almost like it looked back at them, and then it just kept going and just faded off into nothing. So, they tell their dad about it, and he's like, what is it? And they start drawing pictures for him and said, this is what we saw. And so he starts doing some research online and finds out about shadow people, which I had known about before that story. And they would, now they're all grown up now because it's been over 20 years, but they would not go back up there again to that woods.
I wouldn't either. Like, even if even if it wasn't real and it was a figment of their imagination, they believe it was real.
Well, I think what you know, for me, what I really believe it really happened was the fact that both of them, both these kids saw it.
Yeah.
And, you know, it wasn't like one saw it, one didn't, and they go, "Did you see that?" And they go, "No." They both swear they saw this. And, you know, the fact that it just sort of came, you know, they could see something moving in the trees, through the trees, breaking the light, and then it sort of came out of the trees in the open field and sort of just walked in front of them. And the best way to describe it was, I guess, like a shadow on the ground, but it was upright. It was walking. It wasn't like they weren't looking at the ground. They were looking straight ahead in front of them. And this
almost like transparent, like
sort of, yeah, but sort of black, you know, and so that's another thing with the paranormal, the shadow people phenomenon, which is like, well, what is it? Is it, you know, they've said, well, it's a spirit. They've even said it's an interdimensional traveler, whatever that means exactly. But they saw this thing, and yeah, I mean, they would not go back up there for the longest time. And I really need to talk to them and sort of nail down the specifics, because I've only talked to my brother about it, and he's told me this story several times. Every time he tells it, I get creeped out because I really believe they saw something.
Yeah.
When he first told me, I thought, oh, he said, yeah, there was a, you know, they described this as a black thing. And I first thought Bigfoot.
Yeah.
But they said, no, it was like a shadow, but it was walking upright. It was like a shadow that was actually physically walking upright and then just sort of faded off. And they weren't, like I said, they weren't looking at the ground. They were looking straight ahead. And this thing came out and passed them. So it's weird. It's like I know all these people that have had these experiences and these stories. So, yeah, I don't know. You know, another quick little thing was a lady that, there was an old house where they lived in this little town, and they went and put a tape player in this house and hit record and left and went back and got the tape player later. And there were voices on this tape player, like people, it sounded like people talking in this house, but there was nobody in this house. So, you know, either this stuff is out there and people are just denying it and don't want to accept it, that it's possible, or there's, you know, there's a lot going on that we don't know. I mean, you know.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. I think it's honestly probably a mixture of both. Like, there's stuff that people do see and they believe it's real, but it was honestly just their mind playing tricks on them. But I do think there's a lot of weird stuff, whether it be paranormal or just stuff we don't know that goes on and people just assume it's paranormal, or it's actually real paranormal.
Well, I think there's so much stuff out there that we don't know. Yeah, and this goes back to space stuff and aliens and other worlds and other dimensions, and there's so much out there that we have no. I think probably the amount of stuff we know, the amount of stuff we don't know dwarfs what we actually know. Yeah, we think we you know, that's the thing about people, humans. We think we know everything. We think you know, we're so superior to whatever, and the reality is we probably don't know crap.
Yeah, and the thing is, and this is getting a little bit off topic, say in 100 years, we know everything there is to know about Earth.
Right.
But if you go to a different planet completely, they've got different...
oh, yeah.
Like different materials.
Everything's different.
Yeah, so it's a whole nother ballgame.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's weird.
I think people in general, humans in general, think, you know, and this goes back to our alien episode or UFO episode or whatever, that, you know, we think we know everything. We think we're the most superior thing in the universe, and that we know everything, and we're so high and mighty, and we're so, you know, intellectually superior. And I think reality is that we're so far from that. It's not. I think it's very arrogant of us to think, one, that we're that we're superior to anything else. You know, I think and that goes with the paranormal stuff, you know, but then, like I said, so many people come from a scientific basis and they go, well, there's no proof there's an afterlife. There's no proof there's God. There's no proof there's angels. There's no proof there's spirits. There's no proof, you know, and it's like, well, some of that is based on faith. But I think enough stuff happens to enough people that you got to start saying, well, what are all these people seeing and hearing?
Yeah. Kind of going back to us like not knowing stuff. It made me think of, I think it was on Facebook that I saw it. It was like, humans think we're so advanced and everything, but in reality, we're probably a little globe on a 5th grade science project.
Right.
Like, this is all just a simulation. Just kind of poking fun at
It's all
things.
fake, man. It's all fake.
This 5th grader built all this in some alien world that's just that much more advanced than us. And
who knows,
and then,
man?
like, like you said, you've never seen The Matrix. Like,
I know, it's hard to believe, isn't it, people?
The simulation stuff, and yeah. But what you said about proving there's an afterlife and
Right.
stuff, I can't remember the name of the movie, but it's not a big budget movie.
Right.
Like, it's not one
Seems
that
like
came
you
out
told
in
me about
theater.
this before.
I think I have. Well, these scientists or whatever they were discovered that there was something beyond after you died.
Uh-huh.
And it played on that, and the world suicide rate was like through the roof. Like, there were dead bodies everywhere. People were killing themselves because they believed in heaven.
They wanted to go to heaven.
Yeah, they were like, I want to go live somewhere better. And it's a weird take on things, because before I seen that movie, I never thought about that. Like, what if one day we did learn that heaven was real?
Right.
What would people do? Like, it would obviously be, well, Christianity is the one true religion in that circumstance. Like, that's the one that's real.
Mm-hmm.
And how would people react? Would people actually do that?
I would hope not.
But you got to think, if heaven is everything they say it is, and it's so
we're getting deep
amazing,
now, people. We're getting deep here.
would people go and off themselves?
I would hope not.
But in the Bible it says if you kill yourself, you don't go there. So
Right.
I don't know.
I don't know. We can do a whole episode, another episode on the thought process of like multiple lives. Like, there's the whole
Like reincarnation.
Yeah,
and
that's
stuff.
to me that's a very fascinating theory. I know a lot of people would go, blasphemer, that's not true. And I don't pretend to know what's true and what's not. But it's a tantalizing theory that like, okay, you live your life, it's over, and then at some point you're back again, and you don't really know you're back. But I mean, that could be a total
Yeah. 'Cause
another topic.
You were talking about that when we were talking about deja vu.
Right.
Like, that's something that you would experience in a past lifetime.
Right. Well, I had a friend that used to work with us. I don't think you ever knew her because she was gone before you came up there. But since I have this huge, massive fascination with Japan,
Mm-hmm.
she told me that in my past life I was a woman in Japan. Now,
Yeah.
I don't know what that's based on. Red, if you're listening, and I know you're probably not, but I don't know. Thanks for that, I guess. Maybe you can explain that sometime more thoroughly. But yeah, I was a woman in Japan at some point, apparently, in my past life. But
Well, there's been a lot
Anyway.
there's been a lot of Western culture, not culture. A lot of people in the Western, like in the United States.
he didn't know what he's trying to say,
I
ladies
don't
and
know.
gentlemen.
I know what I'm trying to say. I can't find
You
the
can't-
words. People that basically live in the United States.
You
that
sure
have-
you're not drunk this morning?
within the past few years that have like really gotten into Japanese culture. Like,
Right.
it's gotten a lot more popular over here, like with anime and everything like that.
We're
so
really
yeah,
off
it's-
topic now.
Yeah, well, we're wrapping up, so
Are
it's
we?
okay.
Are we done time? Or are we close?
we are going on to 59 minutes. It says.
Okay.
So yeah, is there anything else you want to add?
No, I think this was a good one. I think we could probably talk another hour about the paranormal and about all these other sort of things that sort of branch off from that, like the subject matter of shadow people or the dark side of this stuff, or even reincarnation. I think we could shoot off in various directions and sort of pick it back up another time even.
Yeah, and a lot of these big topics that we talk about, like paranormal, UFOs, and stuff like that, that's stuff that we're hitting now, but I definitely can see us coming back to that at a future date.
Right.
Just because it is such a big topic and we both like talking about it, so why not? But yeah, I think that's gonna wrap up the episode.
All right.
Thank you guys for staying till the end if you made it this far. And like I said earlier, leave a comment if you have a suggestion for any podcast ideas. We'd love to hear it. So yeah, and every Monday now at 9 a.m. Eastern time is when the new episodes are going to come out.
That's right. So be ready.
Yeah. So mark that on your calendars. Make sure you tell all your friends if they like any form of good entertainment. So all of them.
That's right.
So yeah, I think we are going to go ahead and sign off. Thanks again.
All right. We'll see you guys down the road.